welcome to Books and Booze. Today is a very special episode. Me and my co-host Chiara are both very big fans of my favourite murder, and that's how we connected. So, I teamed up with 12 other murderinos living in Brisbane, and we've put together the 12 Crimes of Christmas. This is going to range from comedic, funny, happy stories. Well, not really happy, but this episode isn't going to be for everyone. There's a major warning for that. So if you don't want to listen to this episode, tune out now. There are lots of laughs. It's a great fun episode. We were eating pizza, drinking wine, and just completely awesome. But yeah, enjoy, and we're going to head right into it.
Around the 3rd of December in 2007, at 3 p.m. in a northwestern Sydney suburb of Pendle Hill, thieves took off with not jewellery or gemstones, but about $100,000 worth of ham. I just want to know what $100,000 worth of ham looks like, personally. Yeah, they were taken from Zamet Ham and Bacon sometime between 3:30 p.m. and 5 a.m. the next day. And the owner, whose name is Anthony, found a message left by the thieves that said, "Thanks, ... Merry Christmas." There was a $5,000 reward offered to anyone who knew about the heist, but as far as I could see, no one has come forward or nothing's been solved. There was another case in 2012 in the Blue Mountains, which is again outside of Sydney, and a local butcher had about $3,000 worth of Christmas ham stolen.
Nice.
So much ham. I don't know people addicted to ham. About 2 years... okay, so this one butcher had their stuff stolen in 2012. And 2 years later, he was kind of worried. So he is like, I'm going to set up a shop in my own butchery. And I can't afford a bodyguard, basically, because it's a local thing. So I'm just going to stay there and make sure no one steals anything. He slept in a hammock, which is hilarious, because ham... He slept in a hammock in his prep room to guard over 100 hams, and they sell for about $140 each.
Oh,
That's a lot of meat.
anyone else want a ham right now?
Yeah.
I'm really hungry.
Glazed ham.
So actually, this has been a crime that's been ongoing in Australia for about 150 years. So yeah, basically it's been going on forever, and there's been a spike in November through to mid-December. Most crimes are kind of small, and except for there was a case that involved the Metropolitan Ice and Cold Storage Company, and they had about 126 hams stolen. That's so many hams.
That's not much.
In 1945. In 1931, a lorry truck was jumped and deprived of about 150 hams. In another case in 1884, a Michael O'Brien was accused of stealing ham from an Oxford Street butcher, again in Sydney, because he was seen staring intently at the hams. Before, one disappeared, just before he left the store. And the court threw out the case because they said that looking at a ham 3 or 4 times a day does not constitute a felony.
That's good to know. Phew, I was worried.
That's screwed.
Okay, so the thing that got me interested in this case was actually a photo from the Sydney Police and Justice Museum. And it's a black and white photo, and I hope we can put it up somewhere on Instagram or Twitter. But it's a black and white photo of 2 Christmas hams tagged and sitting in a wooden chair. And the caption says, "Hams in police custody, 1945. And that's my story of the Christmas ham heist.
Hi, I'm Emily. Now, my murder is from Santa Claus town in Georgia. So it's a themed town in Georgia. Everything is Christmas in this town. The town hall is 25 December Drive, I believe. Everything is Christmas. After Thanksgiving, everything turns to Christmas in this town. Lights are on. Shit gets turned. It's great in Santa Claus until 1997. We'll start in 95. We'll just get some context. We've got Kim. Now, Kim has had a rough life. It's been tough for Kim. She's gone through 52 foster homes. Yeah, it hasn't been great. She's turned to drugs. She's now 26. But she's met her future husband, so things are looking bright for Kim. Kim's husband has helped her get custody of her kids again. So that's great. Things were screwed up, but now it's all good. She's moved to Santa Claus, so she's happy now. So anyway, she's got her 3 kids back in custody. Her husband, who helped her get off drugs, has basically adopted her kids. She's adopted his one child, and they've decided to foster kids because she wants to help, in the way that her foster parents have helped her. Yeah, so they've got 7 kids at the moment, 1997. One of them is Joanne. Now, Joanne is a great kid.
Scared. I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be horrible.
Joanne is fine, but her brother is suffering, and he starts dating one of their biological daughters, Jessica. And no.
Brady Bunch, but real life.
Brady Bunch, yeah, Brady Bunch.
Okay, cool.
So the son of the husband.
The son. Okay, the brother of the foster child is his name is Jerry Scott.
You got 3 names.
Hardler.
He's got 3 names. He's got 3 names.
So his sister Joanna is being fostered by the Daniels, because there's Danny Daniels and there's Kim Daniels, and then there's their children, and then there's the foster kids. Jerry is having dramas with drugs, so Kim and Danny, they take him in and they're like looking after him, but he starts dating their daughter, and that's just not cool because he's a drug addict and it's just not cool. And so they're like, nah, maybe don't. And so they basically ban him from the house. And you've got to imagine, this is Whoville. This city is like Christmas personified. All the time, 24/7.
Yeah, drugs and foster homes.
Yeah.
So Jerry's the Grinch now.
Jerry is the Grinch. Jerry stole Christmas. So, okay, what happens is a couple of years later, after they banned him from the house, he makes appearance again. His girlfriend has a miscarriage, and so he's at the funeral. At the same time, this family, who are all loving, all these foster kids, they're having their 5th anniversary, and everything's happy. There's like shit ton of presents under the tree. It's the 4th of December, and things are pretty lit in Santa Claus at this time of year. After this party for their anniversary, everyone goes to bed, and Jerry is a little bit mad because his girlfriend, although he doesn't even know that the baby's his or not, but he assumes it's his. Anyway, she has a miscarriage, and it's a funeral, and he shows up at this house of these people who tried to get him off drugs, and yeah, he kind of gets a shotgun out of the cabinet and decides that maybe he's going to kill the 8-year-old.
What is this?
Yeah. 3 names, man. 3 names. What never do to him?
I don't know. He shoots him in the back of the head, kills him instantly. He's cuddling his teddy bear. It's very sad. So, of course, the rest of the family is like, there's shotguns in this house, and The 16-year-old daughter runs up to get to the parents' bedroom. She's shot as she's trying to go to the parents' bedroom, shot in the back of the head, also killed instantly.
Was she the one dating him?
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah, we're not sure. There's...
She may have been dating.
Yeah. Anyway, so she's trying to get to the parents' bedroom and, he shoots her. She's shot dead instantly. And then he goes into the parents' bedroom and he shoots the wife 3 times, killing the husband 4 times. That's Danny. And he's also killed, but there's a delay there, so... Yeah, it's not fun. And then there's 5 more surviving children, 3 of which he tells them that there's been a robbery in the house. So they need to get in the car with him to get the fuck out of there. And so he takes them, he sexually assaults one of the young girls. Yeah, he's a fuck. And he leaves 2 of the youngest. One is 4, the other one is 10 months old. Yeah.
He leaves them in the house.
Yeah, he leaves them in the house. One, because the 10-month-old is in the crib. The other one hides under a table, so he doesn't see.
Baby.
He then goes and he sexually assaults one of the young girls. Yeah.
11 or something?
She was 9. Yeah.
Did she survive?
Yeah. 4 people died. There was Danny Daniels, the father, he was 43. Kim Daniels, the mother, 33. Jessica Daniels, who was 16, and that was the girl that he was alleged girlfriend. Brian Daniels, who was 8, and he was the little boy cuddling his teddy bear. He kidnapped Amber Daniels, who was 12, Brooke Daniels, who was 8, and Amanda, who was 9. And Amanda's the one that he allegedly sexually assaulted. He left Corey and Gabrielle. Corey was 4, 10 months old.
So allegedly, does that mean not?
Yeah, he's been convicted. He's on death row.
Okay.
Yeah, but he's still alive now, and it's been 20 years.
What a dick.
Piece of shit.
Yeah.
Let's go kill
Fuck
him.
that guy.
Murderinos. Let's go kill him.
Let's go fuck him up.
Yeah.
Shouldn't say that. No, wait. Let's not.
We're joking. We
We didn't do it. We were If he ends up
Allegedly.
dead, nobody must. We'll be in trouble.
So, yeah, that's the end of my depressing story that was supposed to be funny.
It's not as funny as the hands, I can say.
What? Everything sounded funny, but when you were like, "Oh, Christmas town, everything's lovely," I'm like, "Everything is not gonna be lovely."
Great.
Hello, I'm Nathan.
Hi, Nathan.
Hello. So I'm doing I'll do a shortish version of the murder of Dr. Claude Tozer. So this happened in Sydney in 1921. So a little bit about Dr. Claude. He volunteered for the First World War just after it started, and he was injured a couple of times and then went back to the front and was awarded medals and was a bit of a hero. So he was a bit of a well thought of in Sydney circles down there. He was also a gifted sportsman. He was actually the cousin of a Australian cricketer and also the Australian Olympic swimmer Andrew Boyd Charlton, I think his name is. So he studied medicine, became a doctor, and became like a doctor to the high society around there, did very well, was playing cricket for New South Wales. I think he was the captain of New South Wales and was sort of favoured to become an Australian cricketer. That was very important in those days. He was a bit of a superstar. He had a number of wealthy patients who he used to see, and one of those was a lady called Mrs. Mort, M-O-R-T. Ominous. French for death. Dorothy Mort. Now, Dorothy was married to a wealthy man, an industrialist, and she. Mr. Mort, Mr. Death. No, he doesn't really matter. So, anyway, sorry, Mr. Mort. The thing about doctors and patients is they're not supposed to be fucking. So, I know. Got a professional opinion there from Letitia. Not supposed to do that. So, unfortunately, Claude was fucking Mrs. Mort.
Poor Mr. Mort.
Poor Mr. Mort. Well, we don't know. Mr. Mort might have been a piece of shit. We don't know. So, originally, Claude started seeing Mrs. Mort because she had nervousness and hysteria, whatever that was.
And how did they treat hysteria?
So, she used to have nervous attacks for like 5 hours and was a bit... So,
I have nervous attacks for 5 hours.
So, they were, unbeknownst to a lot of people, they were shagging for about 6 months, and Mrs. Mort was very much in love with Claude, but Claude, being a doctor, realised that he probably should not be shagging his patients. Don't say. So he decided to break it off with Mrs. Mort, and...
No, wait.
She went psycho. She did not take it well. So no, he wasn't the killer. He was killed.
Yeah.
So Mrs. Mort got a little gun, and when a dainty lady gun, and when Mr. Mort came round to see her, I think she drugged him. No, she did something to him. Anyway, sorry.
Did he have a nervous disorder?
No, she was very nervous. She told him, he told her he was going to break up with her, and she didn't take that very well.
Been there.
Been there?
Maybe not there.
So, and this is actually a quote from her trial. There was a lady police officer, Nellie Manklow, would have been back in the 20s, would have been one of the first lady police officers. Nellie McGrath is her name.
Go Nelly.
Oh, you know Nellie? Oh, no, you don't know Nellie.
Personally.
No one knows Nellie.
I do now.
So she was a special constable of police, and she said that after the murder, Mrs. Mort said that she shot Claude in the back of the head. She walked into the drawing room where he was, waiting for her to come in, and didn't want to, saw him, and then her heart went flutter, flutter, and didn't want to shoot him in the face. He looked so lovely, she said. So after a time, when he was sitting on the couch in the drawing room, I got a little gift that I'd bought for him. While he was looking at it, I had a revolver in readiness at the back, and I took it with my right hand. While he was looking at the present, I shot him in the back of the head. Then I undid his waistcoat, and I shot him in the heart.
Whoa!
Then I buttoned it back up again.
Nice of her.
And then she sat down and cuddled him for 2 hours.
While he was dead?
While he was dead. On the couch. And...
She shot him in the back of the head. That would have made a bigger exit wound and more of a mess of his life.
Well,
No, you do not!
Here is a photo.
Very excited.
Oh my
So
God.
was Mrs. Mort with a revolver in the stove?
Yeah, in the drawing room.
You need to describe what this is.
So this is a photo. This is on the. You can see this on Trove or anything. You can Google it. It's the Sydney whatever library.
Did you print this out especially? Because that looks
Yeah.
fucking old.
No. Yeah. It's not the original. Hey. Yeah, I was just going to describe it. So it's a picture of the crime scene, and Mr. Tozer, or Dr. Tozer, is very much dead. He's reclining on the couch. He's got blood. He's got a trail of blood coming out of his mouth, but there is no... I don't think there's an exit hole. So it must have been small, yeah. And she shot him in the heart as well. And there's a lot of
bleed too much.
Looks like blood or something next to it.
The photo up, can't we?
I think I don't know if we're not allowed. You could link to it. It's on Google. Link it.
It looks like he's sleeping.
He is sleeping. He's in a very big sleep. So after she had a big 2-hour cuddle with him, she sat down and wrote some letters, and then she took 2 doses of laudanum, and then she. It's a drug.
Is it like a sleeping drug?
Hang on, sorry. She then felt for her heart. So she lay down next to him. She felt for her heart, put the revolver there, and pulled the trigger.
Oh, you're Romeo and Juliet?
Yeah.
Juliet doesn't.
However, she did not shoot herself in the heart. Yeah. She tried. She was just off her tits. Yeah. She wasn't in her right mind.
She had a nervous disorder.
She was losing.
Only 2.5 hours in.
That's right. That's right. She was very anxious at this point. She said that her maid found her, I think, and they called the doctor and everything, and they went. She was taken to a mental hospital, as they called them, and the doctor said that she struck him as being insane. No shit. Because she was so elated at what had occurred and made statements which were not rational. She said that after the shooting incident, she'd been taken to some place, but she was not sure of her surroundings. She said she thought Dr. Tozer was... She thought Dr. Tozer was dead and she was going to marry his brother, but he didn't have a brother. Yeah, awkward. No. Another time, Mrs. Mort was elated at her death. It was to occur soon, and her husband had a beautiful little coffin at home, so she was not doing well. So it was this happened. Sorry, I should have said the context. This happened on December 21st, so that's why it was Christmassy. Yeah.
Christmas adjacent.
It's Christmas adjacent.
Christmassy theme.
So she was tried, and it was a very splashy trial. It was a society trial because these were rich white people. Yeah, and there's a picture of Mrs. Mort. I can't. I've got a better one than that, but pass it round.
She's very fashionable.
Fashionable.
Back when they let you wear hats in your photos.
That's Claude. That's Claude when he was in the army and not dead. And on the other side is a mugshot from Mrs. Mort.
She's right. He is quite pretty. You'd be ashamed to mess up that face.
I don't want to objectify, but I don't see the attraction for her.
Maybe he was just more intense.
Oh, he is, but look at her.
Yeah,
She is not a looker.
he was just wanting to cure anyone with hysteria.
So after the trial, she was found batshit insane and was sentenced to confinement, but she was released in 1929. So she was only, I think it's only like 8.
I'd do it.
And she lived until 1966, so she died in like 80s. So Dorothy was, she was acquitted on the grounds of insanity, but she was imprisoned in Long Bay Jail until the governor was satisfied she was not a danger to anyone. She was there for 9 years. Various supporters, including her husband, tried to secure her release. So the husband stuck around. I don't know.
That's nice.
That is true love.
True love. It's very sweet. In 1926, a report headlined Belle of the Jail was published calling Mort a star boarder of Long Bay. And she spent her time in genteel seclusion, sewing and reading romantic novels. Featuring
really helped with the nervous disorder.
featuring dashing lovers.
She had to administer herself.
So she didn't live in a cell, but in a screened-off corner of the prison hospital with a carpet and the general demeanour of a small bedroom. So it's good to be rich, I assume. Her husband paid for fresh flowers and fashionable clothes, which she was allowed to wear instead of a prison uniform. She also had a servant with her called Bella Carr. Yeah. In jail, yeah.
Jail.
Yeah, a bit rough on the servant, I would have thought, but anyway. That's your job. Yeah, so...
Maybe the servant was just her jail bitch.
Possibly.
I'm in Miami,
So, yeah, as I said, she was released in 1929, and yes, returned to her family, and all was fine. Nothing happened really. It's all. Don't worry about the murder.
So that was it. They're like, okay,
That was it. Happily ever after. Yeah, stayed with Mr. Mort until he died, and then so he died in 1950.
Sorry, what? She stayed with him.
Yeah,
Or rather, he stayed
Mr. Mort, not Claude. He was dead.
He stayed with the adulterous, crazy murderess.
Yes,
Until he died.
he loved her.
So cute.
He, who knows? He could have had girlfriends or whatever.
Maybe she had.
So he died in 1950, and she lived until 1966, dying at the age of 81.
Yay!
And that is Mrs. Mort.
Thank you.
Is that yours?
I think I should probably not have any more alcohol.
No.
It's the
Behind the scenes.
This is behind the scenes, exclusive drunkenness.
I don't give a fuck. I don't give
I
a
love
fuck.
my South Side.
Oh my god, yes!
Are you guys done? Because
Come on, we're waiting.
I'm sorry, I'm very drunk. I'm gonna put it up on the.
Okay, so hi, I'm Liz. I am a dating and relationships columnist for shesaid.com, and I'm about to launch a podcast called Castology on the That's Not Canon network, which will be a podcast that reviews other podcasts. And we launch on January 14th on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So just a little plug there. So today I am doing the Carnation Murders. Okay, so on December 24th, which was a Monday and Christmas Eve, obviously, in 2007, in a small rural town of about 2,000 people only near Carnation in Washington, Judy and Wayne Anderson had been finishing off all their Christmas decorating and had spent all day prepping a meal to host all of their extended family. Known as a generous and giving couple, the pair had lived in their family home since the early 1980s, and they later purchased the adjacent property. And on this spare land, they placed a mobile home, inviting their daughter Michelle Anderson and her boyfriend Joseph McEnroe to reside there, just to give them, a little bit of financial respite and help them in their lives. At 5 p.m., Michelle and Joseph arrived for their Christmas celebrations. Soon thereafter, Michelle's brother and sister-in-law, Scott and Erica Anderson, and their two young children, Olivia, aged 6, and Nathan, aged 3, also arrived. Then at 5:13 p.m, police received a call to 911. The call only lasted 10 seconds, and the police dispatcher did not hear anybody talking, but told investigators that there was a lot of yelling in the background, but that it sounded more like party noise than heated or angry arguing. After the call disconnected, the dispatcher placed 2 calls to the home, but both went straight to voicemail. The deputies were then sent out at 5:20 and arrived at the home at 5:45. When they found a locked gate and realised that they couldn't see the house from the gate, they chose not to go any further onto the property. According to the dispatcher's log, the deputies reported gate is locked, unable to gain access, and it was left there. Family friend Mark Bennett had talked to the Andersons on Christmas Eve and had made plans to get together for Christmas Day, but when Bennett called on Christmas Day, his call too went to voicemail. So at 8 a.m. on the 27th, so 2 days after Christmas, 3 days after the Christmas Eve, one of Judy Anderson's co-workers stopped by the house after Judy failed to show up for work. After trying the door and finding it open, I don't know how she got through the gate, but she did.
oh my god, amazing.
She walked in to discover the bodies of Judy and Wayne Anderson, the parents, Scott and Erica Anderson, and both of their young children. Guess whose bodies weren't there?
Police.
Michelle. Well, yes, the police were not there. No, Michelle Anderson and her boyfriend Joseph McEnroe were nowhere to be found. They were the ones who were living in the trailer out the back. But the police did not have to look very far to find them, since the pair decided to revisit the crime scene on the same day that the bodies were found and were immediately arrested on suspicion of homicide. Now, it's worthwhile pointing out that nobody knows why they returned to the home on Wednesday, as it was swarming with detectives and crime scene investigators, and nobody knows why police became suspicious of them. But what they do know is that they 100% did not come to turn themselves in. So no one knows why they went back, but they did.
They're just like, oh yeah, I'm just like go visit.
I wonder if they were like one of those people who wanted to insert themselves into a murder investigation. You know how weirdos do that? Or they forgot their toothbrush, didn't pack. Okay, so on December 28, both of them were charged with 6 counts of aggravated murder each. During the court case, the true sequence of events came out. Michelle and Joseph had indeed arrived to the Christmas celebrations at 5 p.m, but unbeknownst to Judy and Wayne, they were not armed with presents, but with a loaded 9mm pistol and a .357 Magnum. Joseph deliberately distracted Judy by offering to help her with leftover Christmas wrapping, leaving Michelle free to shoot her father. Unfortunately, that shot missed, and then her gun jammed. So Joseph stepped in, murdering both Wayne and Judy with his gun. Then the pair began to meticulously clean up the house and hide the bodies, waiting for the rest of the family members to arrive. So they didn't just wait for them and then shoot them on arrival. They cleaned up to make everything look like it was all fine. It would take half an hour before Scott and Erica Anderson and their 2 children showed up for the festive Christmas dinner. Once they entered the home, the pair shot all 4 of them. And Joseph was ultimately the one who turned the gun on 6-year-old Olivia and 3-year-old Nathan. No, I can't even either. And don't worry, it gets worse. Michelle reportedly said that she had told him to do this as she didn't want witnesses, and said that the children would be scarred for life at having seen their parents slain.
And instead, they're fucking dead.
Yeah, exactly. They're fucking dead. So during the trials, which were conducted separately, so they were tried separately, and the trials didn't happen until 8 years later. Prosecutors said that the motive for this brutal family annihilation, and this was never proven, this is just what they supposed, was resentment and money. Michelle apparently told detectives that and this has never been proven, this is apparently, told detectives that her brother owed her money and that she was upset because her parents didn't take her side. She also said that her parents were pressuring her to start paying rent for staying in the mobile home on their property. How very dare they? Let's just off them, shall we? Okay, so this is where it gets fucked. So this is where we find out things. So both suspects freely admitted to the killings, with Michelle saying that she wanted the death penalty straight up. But their stories differed. Michelle said that Joseph had been more than a willing participant, whereas Joseph's lawyer claimed that he was mentally ill and had suffered intense bullying at the hands of his girlfriend over a period of years. And we've got some pretty good court testimony from him as well. So on the stand, Joseph described the moments after he shot and killed Michelle's parents and then waited for his girlfriend's brother, Scott, to show up with his family. This is a quote from him. Michelle starts firing on Scott. Scott at the same time goes and gets up and starts charging around the table to where she's at, Joseph said. Scott died fighting for his life, wrestling with Michelle, who was still holding the gun. I tried to pull him off, but I couldn't because he was just too big, Joseph said. Scott's wife, Erica, and here's where the 911 call comes in. Scott's wife, Erica, tried to call 911, but Joseph grabbed the phone. I pulled out the batteries and threw it aside, he said. Joseph said that before he did this, he heard the 911 dispatcher answer the phone. At this point in the case, defense attorneys asked Joseph why he did not stop at that point. And Joseph said, I thought we'd gone too far. I'm really sorry.
Oh, that'll fix it.
That'll totally fix it. He testified that Michelle then opened fire, hitting Erica multiple times and Erica's daughter Olivia once. However, the two were still alive at that point. Hoping to save her children, Erica begged Joseph to stop. He said that Erica said, "We love you and you don't have to do this." But that didn't stop him. And this is another quote. "I shot her first so she didn't have to watch her children die," Joseph said. He fired 2 more shots. I get really upset about this. 3-year-old Nathan first because he was closer, and then I shot Olivia, he said. Before he died, Nathan made a heartbreaking offering. This is another quote. "He held up the phone and the batteries and showed it to me and tried to give the batteries back to me." He testified that Nathan looked like he was accepting what was about to happen and just trying to help the situation by giving the batteries back. He said he understood, and he understood what was going on. Joseph said that his girlfriend had tricked him into killing a loving family. And this is another quote. "Because she was jealous, because she felt entitled. He said she broke him down and trained him to be obedient. She treated me like an attack dog, a guard dog," he said. So after that horrific family annihilation included killing a 3-year-old boy who's just offering up phone batteries to try and fix the fucking situation, the entire case and trials took more than 11 years from crime to resolution, with the death penalty being taken off and put back on the table several times. In the end, Joseph was found guilty of all 6 counts of aggravated murder, and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole in 2015. And Michelle received the same verdict and sentence just 2016. And that is the horrific story of the family annihilation of the Carnation Massacre. Sorry to be a downer, guys. It was horrible. And I don't understand how someone can shoot 2 little children, especially when Erica was like, "We love you. You don't have to do this," you know? So, people are fucking jerks. And I'm glad... Here's the thing. Fuck everyone. And, like, I'm glad that these dicks have no possibility of parole because, like, oh, no, I have to pay rent. I'm just going to kill everyone, including children. And I love the whole, you know, I'm going to shoot the parents first so they don't have to see their kids die. What about the kids? The kids have to see their parents die? How about don't kill? None of this is a good situation. So, So, I'm sorry I made you cry. I nearly cried too. I was researching it, and the way that it was written didn't have it, like, it basically told you what happened. So I wanted to repiece it back together so you kind of didn't really know who murdered and who was murdered. But then when I got to the bit and I found the court papers with him talking about what the kids and the mum of the kids said, I was just like, this is so fucked up. Over money. Fuck everyone, you guys. Who's up next?
See, one of my phrases is people are the best and the worst.
People are the best and the worst.
It's a bit of both. Welcome. Okay. I'm Cassandra.
What do you do? Why are you here?
Okay. I'm Cassandra. I have no personal or professional relation to murder. I am just really fascinated by it.
That's a great explanation. That's exactly what a murderer would say.
I feel like my passion for this, though, kind of rules me out of murder because there's no way a cop would be like, oh, it's just an interest. Okay.
Stop justifying yourself.
Just do it. Just do it. Yeah. Okay. So it's Christmas Day in 1977, and a man named Jerry Davies walks into the Wisconsin police station and says, I helped bury a body last night. I don't know who it was, but I can take you there.
What opening? Such a good opening. Continue. Good job.
Okay. It turns out that the body in the snowbank was his fiance's second fiancé. Yeah.
It was. Sure you didn't.
So Barbara Hoffman was engaged to both men and had dropped out of the University of Wisconsin, where she was majoring in biochemistry, to work in a massage parlor. Inverted commas there, ladies. Honestly, she sounds like a badass bitch, but she killed 2 men, so I don't want to go that hard. Both her fiancés.
Wait,
Carry on. Carry on.
Just keep going.
So, flashback to the 23rd of December. She tells her fiance, Jerry Davies, let's not spend Christmas together, let's go to our own families and we'll catch up in the new year. And he was disappointed. And when he got a call from her later in the night...
Sorry, that's just a way to be like, I didn't get you a present this
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But later in the night, he got a call from her and excited. He said, yeah, I'll come right over. So he got there and she eventually said, we need to talk about something. There's a body in my bathroom.
That is not what you expect when someone says we need to do.
Merry Christmas!
That's what
Yeah.
foreigners expect. That's not what normal humans expect.
Honestly, I hope if my husband was like, we need to talk, that there's not a body. Like, I can fix something in our home, but not a body. Anyway, so she lived in an apartment block and she was on the 3rd or 4th story, I believe, and she didn't know how this corpse ended up in her bathroom.
Oh, sure.
So she got her...
Appeared.
Yeah.
climbed in there, had a nap, and next minute,
Dead. When her fiance Jerry Davies suggested that they call the police, she said, no, because I have no explanation. So he agreed to help her. When they... So they drove the body 15 minutes away to the base of a snow ski jump area to try and separate themselves from the situation. And then they went their separate ways to spend Christmas with their families. He tried to have Christmas with his family, and on Christmas morning, he left his mother's house and said, there's something I need to do, and went and confessed to the police. Her entire plan hinged on him not doing that.
at this point, what a good guy. Like,
Yeah, I feel like he's a pretty good guy.
besides the
Bury a body.
but like, he's obviously got some concerns about that issue.
Yeah, I feel like under pressure in the moment, you might go along with something, but the fact that he confessed and testified against her in the end, I think makes him a pretty good guy.
Hindsight is 2020. Like, truly is.
Yes.
Incidentally, the highway they took to ski jump, or
So a bit of background on Barbara. At the time, she was 25 years old, and one semester before graduating from the University of Wisconsin, she decided to take up her job full-time at the massage parlor and leave her studies behind.
Really?
Like, did she just quit?
the uni dream.
All that debt for nothing? Are you kidding me?
This is in the 70s, so I don't know if that was such a thing. Yeah.
Even in the
Nearly
US.
5 years to do a 3-year course, but like at least I didn't quit.
Yeah, and as far as the debt goes, her going rate was $50 an hour, and I did the conversion today. That's a little dollars. Sorry, it was $50 every 35 minutes. So, bitch is making money.
Doing a Karen and Georgia being like, that's $11 billion.
No, like, I wanted to know. So, men were paying a lot of money to go to her. She gained the reputation of queen of the massage parlors because she catered to her clients' kinkier predilections.
Like burying bodies.
Alright,
The man she buried.
just go back to how she got that job.
How she got that job?
Yeah,
You interested?
There's not that much information on it, really. She just,
The queen, that's how she got the job.
yeah,
Proved her skills.
well, yeah, she just kind of dealt.
Maybe
She,
walked in, she's like, I'm good with the shovel, and like, try it.
well, the kill came after the employment.
Look on the job.
Anyway,
Let me do this.
when she was studying, she was found to have an IQ of 145, which is genius level. Genius starts at 140, and less than 1/4% of people fall into that category.
Wow.
So,
And yet she dropped out of college.
And yet she asked
Started
somebody to help her
someone-
bury a body. Like,
Yeah.
So there's a theory I'll cover later that I think answers a lot of those questions, because I was doing this research like, how is she a genius? What is going on?
This seems pretty stupid to me.
Yeah.
At college doesn't mean it's a bad choice. Yeah.
Her choices after that, I feel like the killing is probably the bad choice there. Okay, there is a lot of information about this murder. There's lots of twists and turns. So there is a book that's been written called The Winter of Frozen Dreams, which was turned into a movie. There's a podcast episode about it, which is amazing. I listened to it today. So I'll add those links.
Podcast.
Once Upon a Crime. Yeah, really in depth. So she had convinced each of her fiancés to take out life insurance policies where she was the sole beneficiary. Yes. Then, despite the fact that she was a huge introvert and didn't socialise with anyone from work, had no friends to mention, the thing was, in this parlour in particular, everyone took something to get through their day. And her something was a combination of Quaaludes and wine, and that made her chatty. Yeah, so you can't get Quaaludes anymore. But yeah.
Have you seen Wolf on Wall Street? Wolf on Wall Street. So you know the meds that he takes that makes it so that he pretty much can't move and has to like himself into the car? That's a Quaalude. They're illegal. Hella illegal.
Yeah.
So does wine like sort of counteract that?
No,
They're downer and downer, yeah.
It's a downer on a downer.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay, then how did that make her chatty?
What makes it different?
Well, at a party, she confessed to a massage parlour patron who she seemed to be quite enamoured with that she had a plan to make a lot of money very quickly, marrying a man with a large insurance policy, taking a honeymoon to Mexico, and making sure that he died of botulism, which is basically food poisoning.
And of course she would just tell
Come back to the States and cremate them so that it couldn't be investigated. But she was very chatty. She was very high. So,
no, you answered the question.
yeah. So,
Now I can't do
It's a good plan until she took the drugs.
well, it's a good plan until you share it with someone and then, mess up your only plan.
Make someone get food poisoning though.
She studied biochemistry. Yeah.
But still.
Injections, which has botulism.
Yeah. No, her plan was more about cultivating the bacteria. But in the end, she used cyanide. Yeah, there were receipts. Yeah, there were receipts found of her purchasing it and having it delivered not only to her apartment but also to one of her fiance's apartments.
God damn. So book
Are you
smart
sure
does
she's
not
smart?
equal street mutual street street
You don't even need that much.
Yeah. So,
Says the professional. You don't even need that.
fiance 1, Harry Burge, was found in the snowbank, and the theory is that his death was an accident. Fiance 2, Jerry Davies, who helped bury that body.
Skiing accident and
No. So fiance 2, Jerry Davies, who helped bury the body, confessed to the police, made an initial testimony against her, and then in Easter the following year, in 1978, was found dead in his bathtub after writing notes to the local newspapers that read that I lied about Barbara and she would never do that. It said Barbara's innocent and I wrecked her life. All those stories I told about Barbara are false. She never had anything to do with the body at all. She never did. I went crazy. I was so scared. The police scared me. I was crazy and I didn't know what I was saying. I didn't know what to do anymore except tell the truth. Barb never had anything to do with the body at all. I swear it, and they can do what they want to me. Handwriting experts have determined that it was written by Davies.
And did you write?
He was found with a bottle of Valium next to the bath, so it was deemed a suicide.
Okay, but I'm sensing a theme. There's a bit of bathtub in each of these.
So when they started investigating, no, there wasn't a bathtub in the first one. He was just found in the bathroom by Barbara. So the theory is that after his Christmas party, Harry Burge, who was found in the snowbank, first fiance, went to her place and she suggested that they have coffee maybe, and he accidentally stirred cyanide into his coffee instead of sugar because they look similar, right? Apparently they look similar. Because he was found to have 37 times the lethal dose in his system.
she did say a lot of it.
She studied biochemistry. She knew that much wasn't needed. Maybe.
Oh, and that's why she needed that much.
Maybe. After Jerry Davies, her second fiancé, was found dead in his bathtub, an autopsy was done, and it was only in examining the organs that they found he had 2.5 times the lethal dose of cyanide in his system.
Did he have any Valium in his system? Or was that just the bottle?
I'm not sure about the Valium, but once they did the autopsy, they deemed that it was not actually a suicide. And she was being the sole beneficiary of them both, and them both having extremely high payouts. One was nearly 1 million and one was nearly 3 million.
And this is in the 70s?
In the 70s, yes.
11 billion in today's money.
The suggestion is that she was using money gifted from one fiancé to pay the other's premium, and vice versa. The ironic thing is, fiancé number 1, Harry Burge, was found to have massive cancer in his kidney and was deemed to have less than 12 months to live. There was no record with his doctor of having addressed that. He had no idea, as far as we can tell. So he didn't even need to die. He was already doomed. It eventually went to court, and she was... Let me double-check my notes so I get this right.
Could she have been poisoning him and giving him cancer?
I don't know. I don't know about any of that. So during the trial, her parents testified on her behalf and said that they were with her at the times of both murders, which was then disproved by phone records by the police. They had no mention of any friends. They had no mention of any social life. And they just knew that she worked as a masseuse. That was it. So it sounded like a really isolated existence. In the end, she was convicted of murdering Burge, who was found in the snowbank, and she was acquitted of murdering Davies, who helped bury the body. The interesting thing about this...
Sorry, he had cyanide in his system and yet she was still acquitted.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, but you might
because of the Valium, and his lungs were apparently twice the size of normal, which indicated drowning, or I don't know enough about it.
But, like, can drugs come across as other drugs on? Like...
It was deemed cyanide by the smell of burnt almonds. Yeah.
But how do you know what the hell? Like, burnt almonds.
Well, it smells like almonds. It's bitter.
And only certain people can smell it too.
Yeah, 25% of the population apparently can't smell the smell of cyanide.
Yeah.
After hearing that she was convicted of one and acquitted of the other, the only statement she made was, "I did not commit the crime of which I was accused and of which I was convicted. That's all I can say," and she has not spoken of her crime since. The wording around that, I think, is very strange. Yeah. So the murder of which she was convicted was Harry Burge, who was found in the snowbank.
I didn't kill anyone. The murder of which I was convicted.
Accused and convicted.
I didn't do that.
So she was not convicted of fiancé number 2's murder, Jerry Davies.
But I did that one.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to say that I did that one, but I did that one.
Yeah.
Very grammatically correct too, of which I was accused.
Yeah.
Because she's a goddamn genius.
That's why she's got the IQ of all of us put together.
Yeah. So I feel as though I've gone over the time, but her lawyer ended up losing his license due to a conflict of interest because... No, actually, the man she confessed her murder plan to was a client of the same lawyer on charges, but he was willing to testify against her. And when asked if representing Barbara Hoffman was worth risking the wrath of the state bar, her lawyer said, "Fuck the bar."
Whoa, fuck the bar.
Yeah. So apparently she was renowned for her beauty, and I have a couple of photos there if you want to pass them around. And the final photo is of her then in court and now at 66 years old.
She's still alive?
She's still alive. She's still in prison in Taycheedah in Wisconsin.
Attractive.
Yeah, okay. Like, the whole photo's better than any other photo. Like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so
It's like a librarian thing going.
it was very difficult to research her. Yeah. It's very 70s, isn't it?
Wikipedia or anything.
She has no Wikipedia page. She is She's not on the prison's like notable criminals section on Wikipedia. There's an athlete with the same name, and all I could find was information about her. She has not spoken since. She was eligible for parole in 1991 and has denied to even apply for it.
Yeah, I get that.
Very interesting lady, very interesting story. The court case, you could do an entire episode on. It's so interesting. But that's the story of Hoffman.
Wait, so what's the sport? What's the athlete do?
I don't know what the athlete does. That would be classic, wouldn't it? No, I'm not sure about that.
She looks like the I Hate Mondays chick.
She does. She does. Yeah.
I knew that face was familiar. I was like, she looks like someone. Cool. That was really
Yay!
Can I also just say your voice is so soothing?
Thank you. I have to listen to you talk.
Thank you.
But it's got what? Salt, it's fine. Salt sterilizes the shit.
Why are you looking at me like, how dare you?
That's for me.
No, it wasn't.
For once, I didn't stain the carpet.
I did not. It wasn't me. I didn't shit on the carpet.
Then hold the mic as close to your mouth as you can.
Oh, yes. I've done this before, maybe a couple of times. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi, guys. Anyway, I'm Emma, and I'm going to do the Ashland Massacre. So, Ashland, Kentucky, 1881, so way back in the day. So, the Gibbons family. There was John Gibbons, who worked away. He's the father who works away. Who was actually, turned out like after the crime and everything like that, he had turned out to be like an absolute piece of shit. So he would say things like he's going to burn the whole house down, and he wants to see his wife in hell with him so he can see him throwing coals onto her body. So he's a lovely guy. Yeah. So this is why their relationship worked. With him working away, they worked so well when he was away. So then there was Martha Gibbons, Robert, who was 17 and lost his leg in a freight car accident. There was Fanny, who was 14. People said that she was a magnetic and outgoing and cheerful girl. And the youngest was Sterling, who was 11, which I think Sterling's a really cute name. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so Martha Gibbons, the mother, and the youngest, Sterling, went away to visit the older daughter. And so leaving Robert, also known as Bobby, and Fanny at home. So across the road were the Thomas family. So Martha Gibbons goes across the road to the Thomas family. And she's like, hey, would your daughter Emma Thomas would like to come over and stay the night at our place because, Bobby being, having one leg and company and like helping people out and stuff like that. Would you like to come over? Pardon?
What day was this?
This was the 23rd of December, 1881. Just FYI. Thank you, Cass. Love you. So Emma's like, yeah, sweet. I'm going to go over and hang out with Bobby and Fanny and like, we'll have a fun night. I know.
That's really inappropriate.
Yeah. Emma Thomas was 15, a fine-looking girl and loved by all that knew her. Aww. You guys. Anyway, so the night goes on, and the last time that Mrs. Thomas saw her daughter was 6 p.m. on the 23rd of December. 4 a.m. on the 24th of December, she looks out the window. And she sees an unusual flicker of light. And she realizes the neighbor's place is on fire. So she runs out screaming, fire, 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 fire. Everyone runs in, grabs the bodies out and shit. And they're like, holy crap, 3 dead bodies. Then they realize they did not die from the fire. They've had massive blows to the head. And within the investigation, they realized that the Fanny and Emma both have been brutally raped. The town comes together and they raise $1,000 reward, which is equivalent to $20,000 to this day. So, because they didn't trust the town police, a lot of private investigators would come from other towns because they didn't trust the town's police and everything. So one of the guys who came in, obviously wanting the money, whatever, was J.B. Norris, who accused the father of the murder, and the father hadn't even been told of the murder. He was working away, so he was in West Virginia at the time. But I think they were kind of putting two and two together because of the shit that Martha would say about her husband, about him wanting to burn the house down, blah blah blah. So anyway, turns out he was all cleared because he had an alibi.
Being accused of a murder never happened.
But even the private investigator was so humiliated that he accused the father that he got the fuck out of there. So it's like, oh shit, whoops, bye guys. Exactly, I'm done with this. Anyway, there's this guy, George Ellis, walks into a store to buy a cigar. Finds out that the father has been cleared of all the crimes, and the shopkeeper's like just casually talking about, because small town, casually talk about the crimes that have happened, because 3 dead bodies turned up. And he looks really, really nervous and kind of walks out of the shop. He then goes find a deputy dude, Marshall Heflin. And so George goes to see this Marshall Heflin dude, and it's deputy guy. And he told Heflin that he lived near the Gibbons and knows something about the murder. But then he asked him, what does state's evidence mean? And state's evidence means anyone guilty of a crime could inform on others involved and would likely get a lesser sentence.
So basically, if you snitch on someone, you'll be less.
That being said, there's no
yes. So, and then he's like, oh, by the way, so these two guys that I kind of work with, he's like a bricklayer guy, William Neal and Ellis Craft. One of his first stories was that he lives near the girls, and he heard Craft and Neal talking about how they basically just want to bone these girls, because one was 14, one was 15, but they look older for their age apparently. But they're going to give them candy, and they're going to bone them. So that was like, they were talking about that like when they were working, and then so these guys apparently rock up to his place, and it's like, oh, you guys need to come with us. And so he goes to their house. The first story is that he walks in and Bobby wakes up from them coming in, and they struck him in the head. And then they go see the girls. They sexually assault both of them, rape both of them, and then smash over the head with there's a crowbar, and they have an axe.
No.
And then apparently this George Ellis guy is like, oh yeah, no, I didn't do anything, but they told me to pour like oil over the body and light it on fire.
But sure, I didn't do anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So because of the sort of crime that happened, and that it was just completely fucked up, like in general, and especially for that time, and like a small community, for something so bad to happen to children, basically, the whole town was like really like in an uproar. So they decided to move the trial to Cattlesburg to avoid a lynch mob.
I assume that didn't happen.
So, what happens is the trial happens in 16th of January in 1882, which is kind of funny because my birthday's on the 21st of January, so this is kind of...
1882?
Yeah, pretty much. I look so good for my age. Shh. I hope this isn't live. No one's going to hear this, right? Anyway, so they moved the trial. The trial happens in 1882. Neal and Craft were sentenced to death. Ellis, because of the state's evidence, was sentenced to life. But everyone's like, you know what? Fuck that. He got a light sentence. What the fuck is happening? So an angry mob goes to the jail, remove him from the jail, take him back to Ashland. and they lynch him. They hung him from a tree, like about, they said, 100 yards from the Gibbons' house.
Whoa.
So they hang him up once. They're like, is there anything you have to say? He's like, no. Like, I've told everything. I've said everything that I need to say. They hang him to let him down.
What?
And they're like, is there anything you want to say? He's like, no. Why didn't you kill me? Why didn't you kill me? Just kill me now, blah, blah, blah. They end up pulling him. He hangs. So he's dead. So the guy who confessed to everything is now dead because he got a life sentence and everyone was like really pissed off.
And the other guy's already dead, right?
No. So the two other guys, right? They haven't died yet. Yes. So because back in those days it was like quick justice. You get charged with murder, you get sentenced to death. Within no time at all, you basically get hung. Yeah. Gone. Whatever. So there was a lot of people that were really upset with that because these guys did not get hung for quite a while. There was appeals after appeal after appeal because they're like, no, we're not guilty. This guy's fucking insane. Like, we wouldn't do this sort of shit. So there was 20 men and boys that met the train with these two dudes on it. Two dudes left, Neil and Kraft. The people wouldn't let them on the train, so the state opened fire on this group of 20 people, killed L.W. Rupert, an aged citizen, who tried to stop the mob from going onto the train. George Kerner, a young father. Willie Surley, a 14-year-old boy. And Alexander Harris, 25. The brother-in-law of the Gibbons, the family who, the people died, you don't remember that. The brother-in-law got shot 3 times, survived, but got shot 3 times. And then Mrs. H. Butler was shot in the thigh while sitting at the station. So, long story short, after many, many appeals and them, these guys became famous. They wanted, once they got, if they got acquitted, they wanted to, people have, these tours and, tell us about, your time, whatever. Kraft was hung on October 1883, and Neil was hung 1885, which is 4 years.
That's a long time.
4 years after the murder in March. So the first dude got lynched, whatever. 2 years after the murder, the first dude got killed. 4 years after that, the second dude got killed. Right there. That is the Ashland Massacre. Thank you. Thank you. My notes are so fucking messy.
There's a Murderino romance. That's real cute.
Okay, yep.
How did you guys meet? Did you meet at a meetup?
Apparently we did, we just don't remember.
That's okay.
That's how every amazing relationship starts, is one of you don't remember the meetup. My partner's just a doofus, he doesn't remember what... Oh, this is... My partner's like that. The first time we met was when I used to work, and I was like, how old are you? He's like, I'm just 18. I'm like, wow, you are too young for me.
Yeah,
and then he thinks that the first time we met, I asked him to do stuff for me. I was like, you need to, here's a whole bunch of work for you to do. That's how he thinks we met. I'm like, no. It's not how it happened at all.
I go want another drink, but I cannot be trusted.
My partner's going to bed.
Good night.
Bye.
Night, Mark. Okay, so I picked, well, it doesn't have an official name, but I'm just going to name it right here, right now, because I'm awesome. Yeah. So I'm going to call it the Dad Bod Murder. And just, if you want an introduction, I'm Brittany, and I also did the last Murderino podcast that we did, a Halloween special, so I'm back again. Jade's getting sick of me, but that's fine. Okay. You didn't even know it was me, but that's fine. Really? Oh, that's nice. No, my hair's really, really dark, but to be fair, it was night and I was sitting near a lake, so I don't really hold it against you. Okay, anyway, so I've called my murder the Dad Bod Murder. That's because it's about a guy named Chris Bradley.
Did he have a dad bod?
No. Well, I don't know. There's only sort of mid shots, so you can only really see his face.
What is a dad bod? It's a fat guy. Well,
it's not like a fat guy. It's just like a... a well-rounded man.
Yeah, like he's just chilling. Like, he's just living his life, you know.
Like little
Yeah.
Okay.
He's doing good, you know.
Yeah. I don't want to say I like that because that's weird.
Well, like, I don't know if he actually had one. But anyway, so the reason it's called the dad bod murder is because he went... Oh, I named it. The dad bod murder is because he actually was a prominent DJ in Byron Bay called DJ Dad Bod. So he was actually really well known in Byron Bay. So if you're not familiar with Byron Bay, which I mean, I know most of the Murderinos here will be, but I know you have some overseas listeners. So Byron Bay is kind of a big, it's not big, but in Australia it's sort of a very eclectic, really chill sort of country town and very known for its music scene. Oh,
it is very hippie-ish and apparently has the lowest rates of vaccination in the country.
That does not surprise me at all. So it holds every year. It holds at a massive event called Splendour in the Grass, which is probably one of the only music festivals in Australia that
filthy
people actually know about.
And they also do Blues Fest.
Oh, Blues Fest, that's true. Yeah. So it's known. It's got a pretty decent music scene, and like Chris Bradley or DJ Dad Bod, he moved up from Cronulla to Byron Bay. To Byron Bay to sort of kickstart his career there. He also had an entertainment company going in Byron Bay, but I couldn't find out too much info on that. But anyway, so this is a really, really kind of weird murder in the way that it was presented in the media. Well, I think it was anyway. So Chris Bradley died on Christmas Day in 2017. So this is a very...
I know this one. I remember.
Probably do. So this is very, very recent, so I have to remember to use allegedly a lot because it's still undergoing trial and everything. He died on, literally 11:30 or something on Christmas Day.
Why is it always 11:30?
It's a weird time of night, but
I'm scared.
so just that's it. That's
sure.
Good as any.
Is it weird that like my brain went AM, not PM?
No, it was sorry. It was 23:30. So only 24-hour time, I know. So he died then. It was when it was first sort of published, his death and everything. It was labelled as, so the media, and you can actually still like look at it, and it says he passed out and collapsed and he was unable to be revived. Like there's no actual, like nothing that says how he died. It just says passed out or collapsed. It's very, very strange sort of terms to be using because what happens next. So paramedics arrive and they straight away are like, they think this is a possible assault. Like looking at him, this dude has not died from natural causes at 11:30 on a Christmas Day. Initial reports also said that it was a drug-free environment, but that's sort of changed since. I know that the victim had something, but I'm not sure about the perpetrator. But again, allegedly. It's all allegedly, guys. So about 3 days after his death, this is Chris Bradley's death, the guy who got charged with his murder attempted to leave the country. They caught him and he was arrested. So that's 25-year-old Javen O'Neill. I may be pronouncing that wrong, and I apologise if I am. Let's just do a sneaky comparison because we've got a guy here called DJ Dad Bod. Javen O'Neill is 25 years old. He's a bloody Muay Thai boxing champion. Like he's a boxer. I'm not sure if he's a champion, but he's a boxer. But like Muay Thai is heavy. Like it is.
Damn it.
Like this is the stuff they do. Ultimate Fighting champion stuff. It is brutal. Like this is somebody that that's a very aggressive form of fighting. So he's always sort of maintained his innocence. But the story goes, or this is what the police are alleging has happened, that O'Neill and Bradley got into an argument. A lot of articles have said that Bradley, quote, couldn't keep his mouth shut. So obviously there was some sort of altercation there. Allegedly. O'Neill has been again put out in the media as being really, really short-tempered. Gets cranky really easily. Apparently, he then hit or he punched Chris Bradley 3 times in the head with a closed fist. He just got so angry and just hit him. So Chris Bradley died and officially his cause of death is blunt force trauma, because I mean, you shouldn't be taking hits to the head anyway, but I feel like three hits to the head from somebody who's trained to fight.
You're gonna have a bad time.
That's just. Whoa. So there are also some reports that O'Neill then tried to resuscitate Bradley, tried to get him to come back, but obviously couldn't. The paramedics come, and this is where it gets really weird and dicey. So when the paramedics come, there's no mention that he was there. There's no mention of anyone being there. Just says that it was
attacker.
Yeah, so it just kind of, if you read if you read the articles, it kind of just is this is this guy at this place where there was supposedly a Christmas party, but no one was there. It's very strangely worded. So it's
that's suspicious.
It's very weird how it's been portrayed. Some people are saying it's a Christmas party, and then all the initial reports are oh no, there was no one there, and then but there were 2 people hosting the party. I don't know. It's very, very weird.
I don't like this.
So it's very, very strange how it's been done, and I can again, I had to I struggled so much trying to find info on this, because there's just not much. To the point where I then I went into my uni library portal and tracked down the I actually found one of the sites that has it updates with every crime that's sort of making headlines on that day, which was very interesting. So I'm very happy I found that. But it's the same thing. It only said there's only about 4 people at this party, maybe 5. So this doesn't seem there's the victim, the murder or alleged murderer, 2 people hosting the party, and then a girlfriend of the alleged murderer. These are the only people who've come forward. So I find that very strange at this point in time, because this is nearly a year after this has happened. So very, very weird. As I said, paramedics come. They tried to resuscitate him and weren't successful, and picked up that this dude had not died from natural causes. And then 3 days later, what's his name again? Who's telling this story? Javen O'Neill was found trying to leave the country. At the moment, the reason I'm using allegedly a lot is because it's still going on. This court case hasn't actually, I don't think it's been trialed. I think they're just doing it sort of very closed. It's very, very quiet.
It's been a while since any of us have heard anything about it. I remember hearing about it when it happened.
Yeah.
But then nothing.
So.
Yeah, and it was really dodgy when you heard about it.
Yeah.
Really hush.
It's very weird, and again, for Byron, which is a very open, loving community, every time I've been there, everyone says hi and everyone's happy, and it's just very straight. It's very, very weird.
Everyone's just
so maybe take this time just to quickly say, if you know anything about this, and maybe this is kind of important.
You can find our email in the show notes.
Yeah. Contact Jade.
Maybe Crime Stoppers.
Yeah, Jade would like to know the update. No, maybe Crime Stoppers. Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah, it's just very weird, and for such a close-knit community, this just doesn't. A lot of things just don't seem to be adding up, really. As I said, there's a lot of attempts to get bail for Javen O'Neill. They've mostly been, there was one time he got out, but then it was unsuccessful. They've tried to say that it wasn't the punches that killed him, that it was the cocaine in the victim's system, and the judge has said, and this is a direct quote, the Crown has too strong a case for Bradley to have died from anything other than those punches. So even though nothing's been definitively said, yes or no, guilty, no, not guilty, I feel like if the judge has already said that, then we're probably going towards a guilty verdict.
Sorry, but Javen's
been arrested and he's
been arrested.
Has he been arraigned?
I don't know what that means. What does that mean?
Has he been like have they actually been like, yeah, well, we're going to start a trial? Like, has that happened yet?
I don't know. There's talk of him seeing a judge. Doesn't actually say arraigned. It doesn't say, like, as I said, there's just no information about this at all.
Okay.
And
I mentioned bail a few times, so he's been out.
So maybe it's a bail judge. Is that a thing?
Yeah, they have that.
So maybe it's that. But maybe. But it seems to be like this is. So that quote is from his third attempt to get bail, and that's. So prior to those 3 attempts, he actually did get bail. So 4th overall. So that's a lot in a year. Got it once and then...
Went back in.
So he got it once. The police were like, no, you fucking don't. It's not happening. So they... Yeah, well, exactly. And
he's tried 3 more times since then. And
yes.
They've been like, no.
And they're trying to say that, that it was other things that caused it.
Do you know New South Wales has one punch laws?
Yes.
Yeah, they do.
Definitely do.
Well.
So, there was 3. There was 3 here. So, I mean, again, it's all still very up in the air, and there's nothing official. But as I said, the judges said that there's too strong a case for it to be anything other than those 3 punches. So that's really a bummer. But I just want to add it on a really kind of a lighter-hearted ending, just so everyone's not really upset. So Chris Bradley had a little dog, his little black fluffy dog.
Fluffy!
And Bradley's dog was adopted by his mum, and she looks after her. I think his name's Brenty.
Her?
The dog is her. I think Brenty, I don't know. And she's basically said that the dog is kind of the reason she's like getting through this, and that she's okay. So it's a really it's an awful situation and really, really sad, but I just wanted to say pets alive and and it's just really I think that's really nice ending that she just loves this dog and
keep it on going
and took her son's dog. And I was sad, but that's the story, the dad bod murder. And I hope we have an actual proper resolution to it at some point.
And this time, as you've been on the podcast before, this time there needs to be a follow-up.
What do you mean? Oh, do you...
What's happened? Give us...
Oh, with my previous one?
Yeah.
Okay, my previous murder was... Ooh, get comfortable. Previous murder was a girl, I don't... If you've been following the podcast, it was about a girl who... She murdered her... Or what I'd been told at the time was that she had murdered her drug-dealing boyfriend in a drug-infused sort of... freak out. She tied him to the back of her car and then dragged his body down one of the roads in Brisbane, which I won't name.
He's still alive?
No, he was dead.
But ripped his face.
He was so messed up because skin on gravel. So she dumped him in the sort of the bush out the back of Cleveland area, and there was a lot since that has happened. That woman has actually officially been found guilty of his murder, but I believe it's now manslaughter because they found a whole bunch of evidence to support that she was sexually assaulted by him. So I think she is in jail at the moment. I couldn't tell you exactly how long she'll be in there for, but there is a definite. But that happened about a month or so after I told the story. And just
if anyone wants to listen to the episode, it's the Halloween true crime episode on the podcast.
So there's a little. I just come up and just keep telling stories. At least this one I researched, so I feel a little bit more confident that I've got the facts right. Alrighty. Yay! It's just
That leads me on to Christmas Eve 2008. It is a festive and full original house at 1129 East Knollcrest Drive in Los Angeles, Covina.
Wait. Like, Noel as in Noel?
Knoll as in Knoll crest.
I was going to say Shannon.
Knollcrest. No, not Knoll. A very joyous party is happening for a whole bunch of friends and family, and as the clock nears midnight, there's a knock on the door. Little Katrina, just 8 years old, flings the door open, delighted to find Santa Claus standing on the other side of the door.
I don't like this. Already it's going bad places.
Yep. So imagine if you were a little girl and you're opening the front door on Christmas Eve and there's Santa Claus.
First of all, unrealistic. My parents would never let me open
I'm like, what the fuck? Yeah.
I mean, you probably have right.
And also 11:30 at night. That child should be in bed.
Doing up at 11:30 on Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
Be asleep. They should be.
Or at least
Yes.
But in this case, she is alive and well and opening the door. For now. No, she's actually alive today, so it's a little spoiler. Yep. So, there's a knock on the door, and little Katrina, just 8 years old, flings the door open. She's delighted to find Santa on the other end of the door. In his hands, he's holding a gift-wrapped box. For this little girl, Christmas has come early. She's thrilled, but before she gets to see what's in the box, Santa Claus steps forward, withdrawing one of his 9mm semi-automatic handguns.
One of them? You know, like how Santa...
He's got a couple. And he shoots the little girl in the face.
And she survived that?
Yeah. She got very severe injuries, but not fatal. So, the little girl is blown off of her feet, allowing Santa Claus to step inside of the house. He looks around him and starts opening fire onto the panicking partygoers. Some say he picked out certain individuals, stood over them, and executed them. So literally held the gun to their face and started shooting. They're screaming and running around in all directions. One of the partygoers manages to run away. She escapes through the back door and finds the neighbors. She calls 911 after recognizing the guy dressed in the Santa Claus outfit as the ex-husband of one of the guests.
What are the odds that she would recognize him?
Yep, so she got a good look and she realized that it's Sylvia Ortega Pardo's ex-husband, who's 45. So this guy, while the 911 call is being placed, he then unwraps the gift that the little 8-year-old girl had been so excited about.
Fucking arsehole. This is the worst part.
Yeah, so she's still alive and she's like watching him unwrap this gift.
Oh.
Like,
so she's been shot in the face and she's watching
him
Santa
unwrap
Claus unwrap a gift that he was going to give her, but then shot her in the face instead.
Mm-hmm, yep. So she watches him unwrap a gift. He produces a homemade flamethrower.
Wait, what? Where did he get that?
He made it.
This escalated very quickly, but it keeps escalating even more quickly.
Yeah, I know.
Like exponentially, some
It's
might
like
say.
shoot an 8-year-old in the face, massacre every party. Oh yeah, true. I forgot about that. Sorry.
Yeah,
Opening the 8-year-old's present, flamethrower.
Yeah. So he starts using it to spray gasoline all over the house, which soon goes up in flames. The surviving partygoers from the gunshot wounds try to escape the flames, jumping out of windows, falling through licking flames of 50 feet or higher, and breaking their ankles from the impact of the ground as they fall.
No.
Some were not lucky enough to live through this horror of the arson and the gunshot attacks. 3 people, including Pardo's ex-wife, suffered fatal gunshot wounds. 2 perished in the flames, and 4 others were victims of a combination of gunshot wounds and fires. That makes a total of 9 deaths. The bodies were so badly burnt from this arson attack that dental and medical records had to be used to identify the victims. While Sylvia's ex-husband, Bruce Jeffrey Pardo, who's 45 at this time, fled the scene with the Santa Claus outfit literally melting and scorching into his skin, over 80 firefighters started to fight the flames for over an hour and a half. Pardo's rental car pulls up outside of his brother's house in Sylmore, which is about 30 miles away. He abandons his plan. This is what everyone, the cops and people, think was his plan, although it could have been something to detract attention from what was really going to happen until he got so badly burnt. He abandoned his plan to run away to Canada with his already purchased airline ticket, and instead he puts one of his guns to his temple and he pulls the trigger. While police tracked him down, they discovered $17,000 in cash wrapped around his ankle inkling wrap in a girdle. They also found the rental car, which had the majority of the Santa suit, besides that was melted on his skin. And it was stuffed inside the car. It was also rigged so that if the police removed it, it would detonate.
What?
Mm-hmm.
This is really high-tech sounding.
I know.
Flamethrower. Cartoonishly evil, like.
A bomb squad had to be called to basically fire an, I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong, incendiary device. That's the one. I hope. To destroy it. As the investigation into this massacre began, it was revealed that Pardo's divorce with Sylvia, who he shot and killed, had gone through just a week earlier. He had no history of violence and no criminal record. So it just kind of goes to show you how weird someone can be when something like that happens. You never know.
Triggered a thing.
Yeah. So he was completely triggered by something that obviously no one ever saw coming. They'd been married for just over 1 year and had grown apart.
They'd been married for that long.
Yep.
It's not like he was their lifelong
He was her
partners.
husband of like 50 years.
Mm-hmm. They'd grown apart very quickly after they got married. Pardo had refused to open a joint bank account with his new wife, and he expected her to look after her 3 children without any of his finances.
What a dick. Maybe look inside yourself before massacring others.
So already you can kind of see something's kind of weird.
3 kids if you don't know how to take care of them.
Just a thought. Yeah.
So the divorce court ordered Pardo to pay almost $2,000 in spousal support, and I think this is when the kind of vengeful streak started to fester in him. This order was suspended when Pardo was later fired for billing false hours on the job.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. So he killed 9 people. That happened in 2008, but today that little 8-year-old girl that I was telling you about called Katrina, she's a teenager now. She was shot in the face and the cheek, and she is now a really strong woman hell-bent on changing the weapons laws. She's joined a number of groups for survivors in gun violence and is actively included in the community. She's chosen not to let her past control her life, but I do have to wonder what it's like for her. They're seeing pretty much Santa Claus at every turn she takes at Christmas, because this is the one that massacred her entire family and shot her in the face. And that is my crime.
Alright, oh god.
can't see. I just took my glasses off. So I am doing the Gatton murders. They are apparently one of the most famous Australian unsolved murders. I say apparently, they are one of the most famous unsolved Australian murders. They're also old-timey. As the people in this room are vaguely aware, and other people may not be so aware, Gatton is a smallish. I have no basis for judging town sizes.
It's small.
We'll go small.
Okay, it's got 7,000 people last census? I don't know. So it's a small country town in Queensland. It's about 90 or 100 k's west of Brisbane. That sounds right. I don't do numbers. It was first established in the 1950s, and by in the 1850s, good lord, 1950, so very old-timey, the 1950s. No, in the 1850s. But by 1898, there was a lot of growth. There was a railway was built, and that led to a larger population. And there was an agricultural college, so Gatton was really beginning to kind of boom. However, let me set the scene. So the thing about Queensland in 1898 is sleeves were ginormous, all the dudes had facial hair, everyone was racist, everyone. I know, right? Yeah, they're a lot smaller. But Queensland was very much still in sort of the pioneering times, which is Wild Westy. We learned about it in school, where people pan for gold, I assume. I didn't listen very much.
Me neither.
Yeah, but what that basically meant was you were pretty much on your own if something went wrong, unless you were in Brisbane and you were rich. There are a huge amount of immigrants coming into Gatton. They were mostly Irish Catholic, and there was a lot of tension in town between the Protestants and the Catholics. That comes into relevance a little bit later, but we'll see. Now, one of the Catholic families who came into Gatton were the Murphys, who owned a farm on the super racistly named Blackfellows Creek. Oh. Yeah, Australians sure do have a great history of racist names. Let's not get into that. Michael Murphy, he was 29. He'd returned home for the holiday break from Westbrook in order to visit his parents, his 9 other siblings, and various in-laws. Now, on Boxing Day, after the merriments of Christmas, and after spending a day at the races with his family, Michael Murphy accompanied his sisters Ellen, who was 18, and Nora, who was 27, to attend a country dance that was meant to take place at Gatton Hall. Now, they were driving in a sulky, which was borrowed from his brother-in-law, William McNeil. A sulky is the carriages with only 2 wheels and a little bench in between, horse out front. I'm just painting word images. So they arrived at about 9 p.m. only to discover that the dance had been cancelled. Not enough people had come. Apparently, the few people who had come were mostly dudes, so there wasn't enough people to dance with, really.
Rude.
Yeah, I know. So they were like, well, that's that, I guess, let's go home. But they never returned home. In the morning, when people realised they hadn't come home, they'd originally just assumed they'd been out late partying.
Where? You say party.
Where?
Like the British.
Yeah.
Well, my mother learnt English from English nuns, so pronunciation. Now,
where were they? No.
Partying.
Where were they partying?
Well, apparently meant to be partying at Gatton Hall.
The one place there was to party.
Yes, apart from the pubs or whatever. All right, when people realised they hadn't come home, William McNeil, the brother-in-law whose sulky it was like, I'll go look for it. I'll go look for them, I should say. So he set out, I assume on a horse. I didn't really look into it. About 2 miles away from Gatton on Tent Hill Road, which is a number I should have worked out in kilometres, but I didn't. McNeil noticed the sulky's tracks on the ground, which seemed strange. It seems strange because surely a lot of people were out and about on carts and whatnot.
Wouldn't you think that they're not the only ones?
Yes, but apparently the sulky had a wobbly wheel, which made it very distinct tracks. This seems fake to me, but I'm not an old-timey dude with a cart, so what do I know? So what happens is he followed his tracks for about a K and found Michael, Nora, and Ellen, who were all murdered.
Oh, shit.
Yes. Spoiler. They all died. They were all carefully arranged in a field with their feet pointing west, which was strange.
That's weird, yeah.
Yeah. Now they were quite carefully kind of arranged. All right. So this part's the grim bit. Michael had been both hit and shot in the head, and although the medical examiner would not actually initially be able to find the bullet, but more on that in a little bit. Nora had been sexually assaulted. She'd been raped, beaten, and had a harness strap wound round her neck. Apparently,
Why do they always do that?
yeah. Nora was the one who was the most savagely attacked. She was the 27-year-old. No.
Okay. Was she the oldest?
No, she was the middle. The youngest was Ellen, who was 18. She was apparently a very bright, vivacious girl, very, by all counts, a wonderful girl. Unfortunately, she had also been raped and had died from a couple of blows to the head. Both women had their hands bound behind their backs with handkerchiefs. It was thought that Michael was probably shot first. To make matters worse, that's probably a bad way to say that, the horse had also been shot and killed. Yeah, it was just a bad situation all round. But then it's like,
you gotta kill the horse too.
yeah.
I'm gonna testify against you. It's a horse.
I mean, yeah, you've got a point.
What is it gonna do? Look at you and be like, no. I'm way too drunk for this.
I'm just
That's why I wear books and booze.
I'm just imagining, like, you know those horses in, like, old-timey circuses who could, like, count things with their hooves? Who'd, like, tap, tap, tap. They'd be like, can you count to 7, Mr. Horse? And they'd be like, tap, 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 tap. I'm just trying to think of that and how you'd incorporate that into a trial. This investigation was completely botched from the beginning. I mean, the Queensland Police Service has a long and proud history of being
corrupt as fuck.
Well, let's say not above board at all. But this was truly incompetence on unseen scales. McNeil, who'd found the bodies, contacted a police sergeant, probably the only police officer in town, just based on rural Queensland in the 1800s. So the sergeant, who was named Sergeant Arrell, attended the crime scene with McNeil for about 30 minutes, then went back to Gatton to send a telegram to the Brisbane police.
Telegrams.
Yes, amongst other police shenanigans, this telegram, because it was not marked urgent, because the telegram operator told the sergeant it couldn't be marked urgent, even though it could, because he was a police officer, it wouldn't be read until the 28th, the next day, and Brisbane police support did not arrive until the bodies of the Murphys had been buried. So further, whilst the sergeant was out sending this telegram being like, I'm in over my head, guys, the crime scene was completely contaminated and they were basically completely trampled by curious onlookers.
True crime lovers have been a thing.
Yeah, centuries.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say eons, but maybe that's a little bit too far.
Maybe.
I'm going to go with it. Eons.
Yeah, for eons. And unfortunately probably been contaminating crime scenes for just as long. Further, the medical examination was, by all accounts, the initial one anyway, extremely shallow, and the medical examiner, he didn't inspect the bodies to any great depth.
Yeah, they're dead.
He kind of was like, seemed dead, like, prodded them, didn't even cut them open. He was just like, yep, seems like a bad time. Yeah, like, the guy didn't even find the bullet that probably killed Michael Murphy. In fact, the fact that Michael Murphy was shot didn't even come into light until the bodies were exhumed and re-examined, because there'd been inconsistencies between the police report and the medical examination report. So, I don't want to go further into all the details and errors and shenanigans that happened because of the police, because that would be an entire podcast on its own. But
Can we make this happen?
yeah, why not? But suffice to say, this particular case was heavily mentioned in a royal commission into the Queensland Police Service, which really tells you something.
Make this a fucking...
Like, literally the next year. There was a royal commission into the Queensland Police Service. Yeah, and they were like, I did, one of my big sources was, Murder in the Land of Oz? They did a really informative...
Inside.
Yep. Inside Murder in the Land of Oz is great.
Yeah, they did a really good episode on this, much more detailed than this. Yeah, and I have the top-notch stuff. Alright, so that leads us to suspects. The main one that the inspector in charge of this, the investigation, was, like, fond of, fun's not the right word. The one he thought did it was a man called Richard Burgess. He was a former prisoner at St. Helena Prison. St. Helena. And no, the one on the island. The really grim one.
Azkaban?
Essentially Australian Azkaban. Because he was a former prisoner, he was kind of shady. The lead inspector was like, this is our guy. I will hear nothing about anyone else. This is him. Unfortunately, Richard Burgess had a very solid alibi. I'm talking he was travelling, he was in different towns, he provided a full account of all the towns. There were people who remembered him at the various times, like, solid alibi. The next most popular suspect, nowadays anyway, actually, I say the most popular suspect nowadays, is Thomas Day, who was a swagman.
Why do I know that name?
I think probably about 2015, there was a book released.
That's it.
Yeah, being like, this dude is the killer.
This dude did it.
Yeah. So he was a swagman who'd been employed by the local butcher. He was not considered a suspect by the police and was actually given permission to leave the area a couple of days after the murder. This is allegedly because the police inspector first saw him when they'd visited his little hut, and he was like reading a book, like not even like highbrow literature, like, I don't know, fucking Don Quixote. Like, it was like something which was apparently, I think people have compared it to a Dan Brown novel, like that, the equivalent of a Dan Brown novel. One local woman claims she saw a man fitting Thomas Day's description chase the Murphy sulky as it passed on its way to the dance. Now, keeping in mind, this description was probably tallish man with facial hair, which is basically everyone. Yeah. So really, it could have been like any dude in Queensland at the time. So, like, people had seen Day walking along this bit of the path near where the Murphys were murdered early in preceding days. I think his employer had seen him wearing a jumper with blood in it. I mean, he did work at a butcher's, so, like, that's not outside the realm of possibility, but, like, I think the butcher actually told him, hey, mate, don't wash your jumper. Like, you've got blood on your jumper, don't wash it. And the guy was like, Day was like, well, I guess I'm going to scrub the hell out of this jumper now. Suspicious? Yes, definitely. It was also Day who was linked to the Oxley murder, which was a murder that took place, weirdly enough, in Oxley, of a young boy. As it was suspected, it seemed like the gun that was used in that murder in February of 1899 was similar to the one used in the murder of Michael Murphy. So apparently in 1906, a revolver with 4 spent chambers was found in a paddock near where Thomas Day was employed. 4 shots were shot in the Oxley and the Gatton murders. So make of it what you will. There was also found on the scene was an in memoriam Yes, that word. Notice from a newspaper memorizing Edith May Cook, who had died of septicemia. In those days, that was a young girl dying of septicemia was usually a code for abortion. Oh, no. A theory was Thomas Day was in love with Edith May Cook, and Michael Murphy may have been friendly with her in the biblical sense. The popular theory is that Thomas Day was not pleased that May Cook had died, and decided to take it out on Michael Murphy and, unfortunately, his sisters as well.
Why? Just because they were there?
Maybe. I don't know.
That's rude. That is rude.
It's very rude. Now, there's another theory from a lady named Stephanie Bennett. She theorized that the murder was orchestrated by a man named Joe Quinn, who is a swag man with a history of run-ins with the law. Quinn actually was deeply involved in the shearers' strike, of which Michael Murphy, I think a police officer, I can't remember, and I didn't write it down. So he was basically on the opposite side of the shearers' strike. There might have been some history there.
Old-timey union.
Old-timey union. Apparently Michael Murphy, according to this theory, was also a bit of a player and broke the hearts and caused the deaths of several girls by septicemia. So there's a theory that Joe Quinn rallied up a gang of displeased locals and they took it out on him and his sisters. So those are the theories. Who's to say what the truth is anymore? Because it was like 100 or so years ago, and everyone's very dead.
Very, very, very dead.
And it's very sad. And that is the story of the Gatton murders, of which there's more details, but that'd take too much time.
Okay, so I'm Letitia. Yeah. Thanks. I'm Letitia. Hi. So I'm going to do a murder that has been covered on 2 podcasts. One is Criminal and the other one is My Favourite Murder. I've not actually listened to either podcast because I'm not up to that episode of My Favourite Murder yet. I'm still working away. I think I'm in September 2018. And there are 2 books written about this particular murder, both by the same author. One is called White Christmas, Bloody Christmas, and the other one is something else, and I've completely forgotten the name. But one kind of carries on from that White Christmas, Bloody Christmas. So this is the Lawson family murders. There was a song that was also written about this in 1930, which was the year after it happened, and was a top 5 hit. Oh, okay. Yeah, so a lot of people, I think it's the Ballad of Charlie Lawson, I think it is. Let's have a little bit of a summary of the Lawson family. So we have the dad, Charlie Lawson. He marries Fanny Manring in 1911. They go on and have 8 children. Unfortunately, their 3rd child, William, dies when he's 6 of pneumonia. They're tobacco farmers, and they originally started off renting, but then eventually got to a point where they actually had enough money, and in 1927 bought their own farm. So were tobacco farmers. Charlie's described as someone who is like he's a good man, an honest man, nice person. He said that he was treated his family well. He was a church-going man as well. Around in 1929, which is the year the murders happen, a few months before Christmas, he's digging a trench with his oldest son. As they're digging whatever hole or trench they are, Charlie actually gets hit in the head with the mallet or the butt of whatever they're using. So he gets a head injury, and Murderino is here. Oh no, that's a bit of a red flag. He also, around the same time, has this painful growth on his chest, and didn't really find anything else about that, but yeah, he had a bit of a weird painful growth, and he was a bit nervous about that and wasn't really sure what was wrong. So about 10 to 12 days before Christmas, Charlie takes his family into town. So this family lives in Germantown in North Carolina. So this is, I think it's smallish, but everyone really knows each other. And the reason why they moved to Germantown was because 2 of Charlie's younger brothers, there's Marion and Elijah, they moved to the area, and he goes, well, I'll move there too with my family. So he takes his family. So there's Kim and Fanny, and there's 7.
There's another Fanny?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many Fannies. Too many Fannies.
So, yeah. Charlie and Fanny take the 7 living children out into town. In order of them, there's Marie, who's 17, Arthur is 16, Carrie, who's 12, Maybelle is 7, James is 4, Raymond is 2, and Mary Lou is only 4 months old. At the time, Charles is 43 and Fanny's 37. So Charlie takes them all out, and they all buy really nice clothes. They get dressed up, and they go and take a family portrait for Christmas. And then after they take the photo, they take off their new clothes because they've got to keep them clean. I'll link. So this, back in 1929, this might have been a bit out of place for a farmer, but because he was painted as like well-to-do and he'd bought his own farm, it wasn't particularly out of place. But then we get to Christmas Day.
So like buy the clothes and do the whole photo.
Yeah, because you would have thought they wouldn't actually have had that amount of money to do it. But here, they probably had the money because they could buy their own farm. We'll cut now to Christmas Day. So they've had all their breakfast and everything. They've done their thing. So Charlie sends the oldest son, Arthur, who's 16 at the time, off to go and get some shotgun shells so they can go and... He sends him off into town, go and get some shells. We'll go rabbit hunting later on in the day. And I think one of Arthur's cousins goes with him as well. After Arthur leaves, this is when the bad starts happening. Carrie and Mabel, so they're the two youngest daughters, they decide they're going to go off to one of their uncle's houses and go and play with their cousins for Chris. Mabel
is like 4 months or something?
Mabel's 7 and Carrie is 12.
Wait, what's the youngest?
The youngest is 4 months.
What was her name again?
Mary Lou. All right. So Carrie. Yeah. So Carrie and Mabel going off. They're walking off to their uncle and auntie's place. Charlie's hanging out in the barn. While they're walking there, he shoots both of them.
What?
Yeah. So he has a shotgun and shoots both of the girls. He then bludgeons them in the head with the butt of the shotgun because they were still moving. And he wanted to make sure they were dead. He then took them inside the barn, put rocks under their heads, and then crossed their arms across the chests. He then goes up to the house, and his wife Fanny is coming out of the house to get some wood for the fire. He then shoots her. And that's when Marie, the oldest daughter, she's 17, begins screaming. And yeah, no shit. So then the two little boys who are 2 and 4, they go and hide while this is happening. So Marie's screaming. He shoots her point blank in the heart. And the clock is behind her, and the clock, I think, gets stopped as well at the same time, so they know when she was killed.
Break the clock, yeah.
He then, I think,
it's very Agatha.
James, who is 4, I think was actually holding on to Marie. So he reaches down, Charlie reaches down, grabs him, and with a shotgun. Raymond then was hiding behind the stove, and Charlie managed to convince him to come out. He gets bludgeoned too. And that leaves baby Mary Lou.
No, stop. No more.
She gets bludgeoned as well. So then he goes upstairs and gets pillows for these five family members he's just killed, puts them under the head, and then poses them as well with crossed arms over their chest.
Does he think that they're like saving them by killing? Keep going. It's fine.
There's theories as to why, but anyway, so he sort of disappears, and then it's said that there's a relative was first on the scene, but I'm not sure whether it's Arthur and the cousin who have come back, or whether or not it's one of Charlie's brothers or sister-in-laws who have come. Either way,
the 2 girls were going to visit. Did he know that they were coming to visit?
I mean, possibly.
So he was like,
maybe. I couldn't find that though. It didn't really say. Yes, it was. So they basically, once news got out that the family had all been murdered, pretty much the whole town then came, and along with police, and no one knew where Charlie was. And because they assumed Charlie was the one who killed the family, people actually went, like, when they went home that night, locked their doors because they hadn't found Charlie, just to make sure that Charlie couldn't hurt them. So what Charlie had done is he went to the woods that were behind the barn. There was a tree that basically when they found him, there was evidence that he'd paced around the tree for ages because it had been snowing a lot and there was like no snow around the tree, like probably like he's been walking around this tree for ages. So he wrote 2 notes. One says trouble will cause, and the other one says blame no one but I.
oh, you don't say.
Yeah, he shoots himself. As you do. So there's a rumour, and I'm not sure whether this is actually true, but there's a rumour that basically once everyone was there, that the police and I think Arthur actually heard the gunshot of Charlie killing himself.
theoretically
He
you
just
waited
ran
until
around
people
the
were
tree.
there and then was like, bye.
Maybe, or maybe he's just like, oh, well, I'm going to get caught anyway. I'm just going to kill myself. So the 8 Lawsons who have died, they all get buried in the same plot. Charlie along with them. And they're literally pretty much...
Buried Charlie with the rest of his family that he just freaking murdered?
Yes. Because, I don't know. Anyway, all the neighbours went to help dig the grave. They had to dig this whole long trench so they could just bury them all side by side.
You already started digging it then, hey?
Yeah. I don't know if it was the same one, but either way. Anyway, there was estimated that about 5,000 people actually attended the burial and the funeral.
Yeah, because they're all nosy cunts.
Yeah, well, and like, to be fair, like, there was a lot of family. So Charlie had 7 brothers and sisters, and Fanny had 8 brothers and sisters. So there was a lot of family.
And now we've got like
5,000, yeah, plus the rest of the town and all the visitors.
But there's a lot of nosy cunts there.
So it does get a little bit worse, I guess. Well, so Marion, one of Charlie's brothers, decides, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just keep the house as it is and charge 25 cents for tours.
What?
Yeah.
I mean, when life gives you very, very peaceful lemons.
And he made his daughter, whose cousins and aunt have all just been killed. He makes his daughter do the tours. Let's see, she was a little bit younger than, I think she would have been 15, I think, or so.
Too young. Too young.
Too young. Must be awesome. Lots of people came to these tours, and incidentally, Marie, the oldest daughter, had baked a cake that happened to have raisins, and lots of people would actually come by the house, and because the cake was still there, would take raisins, because that was their little...
The whole Murderino thing is that with the fucking, like, raisin cake.
Yes. So everyone were like, oh, I'm going to take a raisin because that's my keepsake from the tour. So, like, and it happened so much that Marion actually got it put in a glass case. The house has actually since been torn down, which I think is a good idea. However, I say it was closed down, but in 1979, on the 50th anniversary, there was a thing in the paper saying, hey, it's the 50th anniversary of these murders, and people went to the house on the 50th anniversary.
I mean, look, but the cake. Let's talk about the cake.
It's gone. The cake is gone. So
You can still buy pieces of the cake?
Yeah, I think the lady bought the cake itself.
What?
Oh, I didn't actually look too much into the cake. I just knew about the raisins.
Priorities.
I'm sorry.
I don't want to have a cake that is that old.
Arthur then is, I think, understandably destroyed, but he kind of he's the only surviving of that family. Yes, he
You say of that family like that. Is there more murders to come?
No, sorry, no more murders. Yeah, of that particular Lawson branch, yeah, he's the last one remaining. He is understandably no.
Oh, but he was the last one remaining.
I'm actually going to go into that because he never quite recovered, but he was quite adaptive, according to whoever it was that spoke onto the documentary. But he went on. He married a woman called Nina. They had a son who they also named Arthur, and they had 3 daughters. One is named Maybelle. The other one is Lavon, which was Marie's middle name. And I don't know the name of the third one because she wasn't named after one of the sisters. And I couldn't find out what her name was. I know.
Mary Lou. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Mary or Lou.
Arthur sadly died in 1945, aged...
Wait, that's way out.
Yeah, so he was 1945, he was aged 35. He was 35, he died in a car accident.
Oh, that's a shit way to go.
Yeah. And he left behind... So, for a while, it's kind of never really thought about, it was like, oh, yeah, we don't really know why Charlie did this, But, oh well, it's a thing that happened. Until the book White Christmas, Bloody Christmas comes out. And that's when Stella Lawson, who is one of Marion's daughters...
Marion was one of Charlie's brothers.
And he was the one who set up the tours. I think Stella was the one who had to give the tours.
Oh, no.
So Stella is one of the cousins. She actually willingly interviews for the book. And one of the theories that why Charlie killed the whole family was that Stella had heard whispers from her mum that Fanny had told her that maybe Charlie and Marie, the oldest daughter, were having an incestuous relationship. And that maybe Charlie impregnated her. It's not confirmed, like Arthur never confirmed or denied the allegations. But
he even knew?
Yeah, he might not have even known.
He was what? 16?
16, yeah.
Well, I mean...
So...
I'm still done.
In the documentary, there's two women who say they were friends with Marie, and they're like, I would have known if Marie was pregnant because we had the same cycle and she would have told me. Maybe she wouldn't have because it was 1929. There was a theory that I think Marie had a boyfriend that he was going to help her out with the situation by marrying her or something. But
That's how they sorted out situations back then.
yeah.
Get pregnant!
It's still really unclear, but a few other theories are that maybe there was already domestic violence. It was just the culmination of it. Maybe there were financial worries. There's also the head injury he had, and the fact that he had this growth, and maybe he was scared of dying and leaving the family behind, so decided to take them with him. I know. And the other one I found, which I can't find, this is like a citation needed on Wikipedia, is maybe he witnessed an organised crime incident and his family was killed. I don't think so.
Why did he spare Arthur? What was so special about Arthur that he spared him? Arthur was getting gunned for something.
He was...
Yeah, but it's not like he came back and gave the pellets to his dad, who then killed them. He killed them all while he was out, so clearly he had enough. So why was it Arthur that he spared? Like, what was so special about Arthur? Was it because he was like, he's the oldest boy, he can carry on the gene?
Yeah, maybe. I think because, like, after Charlie had gotten hit in the head, Arthur sort of became more of the man of the house as well. So maybe he was just... maybe he was the favourite child. I don't know. Yeah, so there's lots of thoughts about why everything happened. We still don't really have a clear answer. That's in Family Murders. I'm sorry that wasn't more fun.
So mine isn't so much a murder as it's just like a quirky little case, and I got most of the information from the Washington Post, and by that I mean like I literally copied and pasted like a solid chunk of this, so all credit to them. Okay, so the story, it's called the Annandale Jane Doe. So the story goes like this. Just inside Pleasant Valley Memorial Park, a small cemetery in Annandale, a freshly coiffed, auburn-haired woman in her late 50s or early 60s spread a clear plastic sheet on the ground. Next to the sheet, she placed an 8-inch Christmas tree, adorned with gold balls and red ribbons. She wore bifocals with a translucent frame and a blue all-weather Eddie Bauer hooded jacket over a blue sweater and blue pants, and she carried a green knapsack. In the darkness of a mid-December morning, she sat down and finished off a flask of brandy, perhaps chasing it down with bottles of peach and mango juices. She turned on a portable tape player, placed headphones over her ears, and listened to a recording of comedians Mel Brooks and Carl Rayner doing their 2,000-year-old man routine. Then she reached into her knapsack and pulled out a plastic bag and a roll of masking tape, placed the bag over her head and tied off with the tape. She put the roll of tape back in the knapsack and then lay down and suffocated. So it was December 18, 1996 when this Jane Doe committed suicide. Apparently she was determined to remain anonymous. So when cemetery workers found her shortly after 9 a.m, they called police. Detectives Richard Perez and Mike Headley arrived 40 minutes later, and her body was still warm when they arrived. As the investigators checked her pockets for identification, they found only 2 envelopes, one addressed to the cemetery and one to the coroner. Both contained 2 crisp $50 bills and the same typed note. Deceased by own hand, prefer no autopsy. Please order cremation with funds provided. Thank you, Jane Doe. In addition to this, a poem was found which read, Now I lay me down to sleep, soon to drift to the eternal deep. And though I die and shall not wake, sleep sweeter will be than this life I forsake. So when they couldn't identify the woman through fingerprints or locate any family from missing persons reports, police distributed a drawing of the woman through news media and still got nothing. So one of the detectives said, if she's a drifter, she's the best kept drifter I've ever seen. She wore a gold guess watch, a 14-carat gold ring with 4 jade stones, and clothes that Perez thinks might have come from an upscale store such as Saks Fifth Avenue. The site she chose for her demise, Pleasant Valley, probably wouldn't be known to a drifter. The woman had 8-inch scar on her stomach, possibly from a cesarean, and she lay down to die near a section of the cemetery where infants were buried, but not near any particular grave, and most of the stones nearby were fairly recent. In addition to drinking brandy, she had a 0.14 blood alcohol level, and swallowing Valium, she had 2 empty juice bottles and a new roll of masking tape in her knapsack. But unlike many suicides Perez sees, she had no receipts in her pockets to enable police to track her movements. This lady appears to have taken thoughtful effort, he said, to leave us no clue as to who she is, and she's got it all plotted out. He added, noting that the suicide notes, the money for cremation, and even the plastic sheet on the ground, I don't think I've ever had another case that's beaten me up like this one. So you can see there's some photos here of what she had on her and sort of what they, sorry, I still need the phone for my notes, what they sort of think that she looks like reconstructed. So even today they don't know who she is because she was pretty successful in remaining anonymous. But there is one sort of main theory on who she might be. So the most likely possible identity is Donna Lee Thompson. So she was a manager at Jacobs Lakeview Manor, a group home in Port Austin. And on the 17th of April 1996, she loaded some boxes into the group home's van and said that she was going shopping. She was never seen again, and the van was recovered in August in Bay City. So she was originally from New Jersey, which was around 6 hours drive from the location of the Jane Doe, and she worked in a nursing home. So she had knowledge of death protocols and assisted suicide procedures that the Annandale Jane Doe exhibited. So the suicide method was from a book called The Final Exit, and it's used by many old people with terminal illnesses. Also, there was money left for the coroner, and her body had a plastic sheet next to it. So someone who had experience of handling the recently deceased, so someone who might have worked at a nursing home, would have familiarity with this sort of sheeting. But that sort of led them to believe that she might sort of be connected. As well as that, her appearance was really similar to the Jane Doe, and she had the same glasses, the same coloured hair, really similar bifocals, yeah, as I said.
Did they not identify it through bones or?
I don't know that they ever found that. So they couldn't actually find any connection to any family. I think it was the workplace. Yeah, so she didn't have any assets, no children or anything, Donna. So yeah, it's still actually unsolved to this day. Yeah, so I just thought it was a peculiar sort of way to go, but she definitely achieved her goal in remaining anonymous. But it was just something different and unusual, I thought.
Yeah, especially the Christmas tree.
Yeah, so quite sad, but yeah, just interesting.
I don't want to clap for that.
That's alright, you don't have to clap for suicide.
Last but not least. Okay. Mine is written out in a script form because otherwise my brain will just go. Yeah. Okay. I have no idea if I'm gonna actually be able to read this because I'm very drunk right now. But that's what wine and crime is for. Bam! Boom! Alright, I'm Dana Dunham. I'm a singer-songwriter.
Has recorded the most amazing song that has been featured on the beginning of this episode.
Yes, thank you so much for that, Jade. Jade will provide all my links down below. Spotify and Apple Music and everywhere your favorite places are streamed. Anyway. Anyway, your favorite. Yeah. Anyway, your favorite music is streamed. Jade will have all my links down below. Okay.
Amazing.
Thank you. Okay, so this murder
is actually fairly recent. It happened in 2011, which is only 7 years ago, which seems like a while, but like if you think of some of the other murders that have been featured tonight, like 1800s and stuff, like this is like only 7 years ago. In early December 2011, I don't know the exact date, but it was like really early December. All the articles I found are like from the 6th of December, the 5th of December 2011, so like around the early time of December. 67-year-old Michelle O'Dowd was found beaten and strangled and hidden beneath a pile of Christmas presents in her Florida home. Yeah. Don't worry, it gets worse. She was discovered by her twin brother, Phil Axt, who had gone to check on her after she had missed work, which was unusual for her.
Wait, I'm sorry, but was that his real name?
Yeah, Phil Axt. Phil A-X-T.
Oh, okay. I was thinking like
sounds pretty fucking
No.
Axed.
He didn't do it. Spoiler alert, he didn't do it.
Despite his supervillain.
Despite his supervillain name, he didn't do it. So when Phil arrived at Michelle's gated community home, so she lived in a gated community that was like super secure and all that jazz. When Phil arrived at Michelle's gated community home, he found that the door was open, chairs and tables were like all turned upside down, and her place was ransacked. As well as that, her car and her dog were still at home, which is like real weird. It took Phil 3 times going through Michelle's den to find her when he spotted her foot sticking out from beneath a pile of Christmas presents meant for family and friends, and her face was covered in a towel. She had a lot of presents. She was an aunt and a grandmother, I believe, or a great aunt.
It's like Dudley Dursley level of presents.
So her face was covered in a towel that was like all bloody from, you know, I forgot what happened to her already. She was beaten and strangled. Like, if no one found you until Christmas Day and they're just like opening presents, and then as the present pile is like disappearing, there's all of a sudden a body under the Christmas tree. Okay, anyway. So, authorities then learned that while Michelle usually lived on her own, she had been letting a family friend, and now some sources that I found say ex-girlfriend, other ones say current/living girlfriend of Michelle's nephew, stay with her for a month for free. So she was like not paying any rent, not having to pay any bills, not even having to pay for groceries, any of that. So Michelle was real nice. So this family friend was Patty Michelle White. 3 names. Yeah. A 40-year-old woman from South Carolina. She, and this is quotes, had trouble keeping a job and couldn't get her life together, according to family members of Michelle O'Dowd. Michelle even trusted Patty with her debit card and PIN number in order for Patty to buy groceries for the two of them while Michelle was at work during the duration of her stay. The wine is real, guys. Okay, so police believed that Patty had returned to Florida after staying with relatives in South Carolina, which she's originally from, to rob Michelle, as she later used Michelle's debit card to withdraw $1,000 from 2 ATMs in Florida. An even more interesting fact is that Paul, who was Michelle's twin, said that neighbors of Michelle heard screams for help and yet no one called police. Yeah, let that sink in. So, Patty fled. She was later put in jail on fugitive charges after fleeing to South Carolina, and was later sentenced to 45 years in prison after pleading guilty to second-degree murder for killing Michelle O'Dowd. 45 years for second-degree murder, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
It's pretty good for second-degree murder.
I don't know.
Right? Is it?
You only get 20 years. You get 25 years because that's a life sentence.
Yeah, and I don't think you get any more than that. You don't.
25 years is a life sentence in Australia.
Yeah.
Why is that a life sentence?
And I don't think you'd get 2 consecutive life sentences in Australia. I don't think that happens.
It's not a life sentence supposed to be your life.
Well, you'd think so.
Is if you die at 25, that's a life. I don't know. I don't make the rules.
I didn't make this.
Anyway, I know nothing about the legal system. I legit know nothing about the legal system in America, but like, I've seen people get less time for more serious crimes, right? Like, she pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, which is like, if I'm remembering correctly, it's like they didn't necessarily mean to kill them, but it's not manslaughter because manslaughter is like an accident. But like second-degree murder, I believe, is like, look, don't quote me, but like I'm pretty sure it's like you went there was sort of with the intention of killing someone, but then it was an accident in the end. Accident. Or a crime of passion or whatever. Anyway, so Michelle, who is known as Aunt Mickey to her friends and family, was the sweetest, kindest person who would never hurt a fly, says her twin brother. And that is the murder that is known as the dead body found under the Christmas presents murder.
Stay sexy and
Don't get
murdered! Elvis, do you want a cookie?
Thanks for listening to Books and Booze. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter under BooksBoozePod or email us at hello@booksboozepod.com. We're also on Patreon if you'd like to support our podcast by donating as little as $2 a month. If you're looking for a free way to support us, then you can leave us a review on Apple iTunes or Stitcher. It really helps other people find us. As always, it's been a pleasure. I'm Jade, and you can follow my Instagram at boho_bookworm, and Chiara is my co-host, and you can find her under bookish.kiki. Until next time, happy reading and drink responsibly.